Hi, I'm David Maldo, and in this video, I'm going to bring up the view from 4 different webcams so that you can compare them side by side. This is one of a series of videos comparing over a dozen webcams. We're doing them in a round robin so you can see each of them in a head-to-head. Before we get started, a quick disclaimer. Logitech has sponsored this series of videos. However, they asked me to keep it neutral. I'm not going to share any of my own opinions. I'm just going to show it to you and let you see for yourselves. As part of keeping things fair, I'm leaving all the cameras on their default settings. Usually I like to tweak the brightness, the contrast, to try to optimize things, but I don't want to subconsciously bias anything in favor of one camera over another, so I'm just going to leave everything on their defaults. Okay, so let's bring up our 4 cameras. In this video, we're going to compare the Logitech 930e, the Logitech C270, the Nexigo N620, and the AVerMedia CAM 313. The first thing we look at is our aspect ratio. That just means the shape of our video window. All 4 of these cameras are 16 by 9. For every 16 pixels going across, there's 9 up and down. The result is the familiar rectangular shape that you see, which is what most video conferencing apps are looking for, so we're set. The next thing we want to look at is our field of view, or how wide the camera angle is, how much of the room it captures. If I wanted to have a colleague sitting next to me in the meeting, could they be on camera? And if I talk with my hands, how much of that comes through on camera? Next, we want to check for distortion, or how straight our lines are. Now, these cameras are doing a pretty tough job. They're trying to focus in on me, but they're also trying to capture the room. So there may be some curvature around the edges, but for the most part, we want our straight lines to look straight. So I've tried to include a lot of straight lines behind me, this cabinet, the curtain rod holding up the green screen, and you can see for yourself how they look. Next, we want to look at our color, and I've tried to include as many colors as I could behind me. We have some green, red, orange, purple, blue, and brown. And there's 2 things you want to look at when you're looking at color. One is, does it look nice? Does the blue wall look like a nice blue wall? But the more important thing might be if it's accurate. If you haven't been to my office, you don't know what kind of blue this is supposed to look like. So that's why I included the Coca-Cola box. I figure everyone should be somewhat familiar with Coca-Cola red. So don't just see if it looks good, see if it looks like Coca-Cola red. The next thing we want to compare is exposure, or how well the cameras deal with lighting. Like most people, I don't have the ideal lighting setup at my home office. It's okay, but I think some lights might be a little bit too bright, and there are some areas where I could use some more lighting, where I have some shadows. So judge for yourself how well these cameras deal with my typically less than perfect home office lighting. Next, let's look at the sharpness, or the clarity of the images provided by these cameras. For the most part, that's determined by the resolution of the camera, or how many pixels there are on the screen. The Logitech C270 is running at 720p resolution, which means there are 720 pixels up and down, 1280 left and right. I consider 720p or anything above it to be high definition. The other 3 cameras are running at 1080p resolution, 1080 pixels up and down, 1920 left and right. So I try to include a lot of detailed items behind me. Take a look at me, take a look at the items behind me, and see what you think about the clarity and detail of each camera image. The last thing we're going to compare is the audio. Each of these webcams has its own internal mic. Now, up till now, I've been using the mic on this Logitech Zone headset to keep it neutral between the cameras, but now I'm going to switch to each camera in turn. To make it a real-world test, we're going to add a couple things. One is background white noise. I have a loud air conditioner, and my computer fans are just humming away here. We're also going to add a little people noise. I have an audio file. Let me play it here through the computer. It's people talking. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to play it through my iPhone here and see how well the cameras pick it up. I'm playing it right now. You're probably not hearing it. This headset's designed to block that out, but we're going to see how well the cameras do with it. So let's switch to our first camera. You're now hearing me through the Logitech C930e. So decide for yourself, how does it sound? How well can you make out what I'm saying? Can you hear me over the fans and background noise in my office? If I was working in a crowded area, can we still get some work done? Can you make out what I'm saying? Can we still be productive? And while we're here in our zoomed out view to give you more time to hear the microphone, let's go over everything else. Let's take a closer look at everything else we've talked about. So first, our field of view. If I had a colleague working with me, could they be on screen? If I talk with my hands, does that come across? What do you think about our distortion? Do our straight lines look straight? Our guitar necks, our curtain rods? What do we think about our color? Does it look nice? And does the Coca-Cola red look like Coca-Cola red? How is the exposure? My lights aren't perfect here. How well is this camera dealing with it? And finally, the sharpness, the detail, me and the items behind me. What do you think about the clarity? So with that, let's go to our next camera. You're now hearing me through the Logitech C270, and again, subjectively, how do I sound? Can you make out what I'm saying over the background noise, the fans in my office? If I was working in a crowded area, can you make out what I'm saying over what these loud coworkers, I guess, are saying? We still get some work done. And while we're here, let's take a closer look at everything we talked about so far. What do we think about our field of view? Can I have a colleague on camera with me? If I talk with my hands, does any of that come across? Do our lines on the items behind me, cabinet, do the lines look straight? How is our color? Does it look nice? And does Coca-Cola red look like Coca-Cola red? The exposure, how well is it dealing with the lighting in this room? And finally, the sharpness, the level of detail on me and the items behind me. And with that, let's go to our next camera. You're now hearing me on the Nexigo N620. And again, subjectively, how do I sound to you? We're working together. Can you make out what I'm saying over the fans and noise in my office? If I was working in a crowded area, can you make out what I'm saying over the other people in the room? We still get some work done. And as long as we're here, let's take a closer look at everything we talked about so far. What do we think about our field of view? If I have a colleague, can I have a colleague on screen with me? Can I talk with my hands? What do we think about our distortion, our straight lines? The cabinets, guitar necks, curtain rods all look straight to you. Our color, does the colors look nice? Does my blue look like a nice blue? And does the Coca-Cola red look like Coca-Cola red? The exposure, how well is it dealing with the light that's too bright where it shouldn't be and not bright enough where it needs to be? And finally, the sharpness, the level of detail, the clarity of my face, me, everything behind me. And with that, let's look at our final camera. You're now hearing me through the AVerMedia CAM 313. And again, how do I sound to you subjectively? Would this be a good meeting? Can you hear me over the fans in my office? If I was trying to work in a crowded office or a crowded coffee shop or something, could you make out what I'm saying over the noise? Can we still get some work done? And while we're here, let's take a look at everything else. What do we think about our field of view? Could I have a colleague sitting next to me, a coworker, joining the meeting? If I talk with my hands, is that effective? What about the distortion? Our straight lines, the guitar necks, the cabinets, all the lines look reasonably straight. Color, does the color look nice to you, and does it look accurate? Is our Coca-Cola red looking like our familiar Coca-Cola red? The exposure, how well is the camera dealing with lighting? And finally, the detail, the clarity, the sharpness on me and the items behind me. Now, obviously, audio is pretty subjective, but you know what sounds good to you. And remember, the point is, this is for business meetings. You want to be able to understand what I'm saying clearly. If I'm in a meeting with someone for an hour, I don't want them straining to understand, to make out my words. I want them to be able to focus on being productive. So that wraps up this video. I hope you come back for the rest of the series so you can see all the head-to-head matchups, and I hope you found this helpful. Thanks for watching.